Welcome to the Full Strength Father podcast. I'm your host, Kristoffer Koerper, and in today's episode 2 of this podcast, I'm going to share a little bit of my backstory and what's led me to this point of launching Full Strength Father. And this will give you some insight into my personal experience and really ties in well to the overall perspective when it comes to where Full Strength Father is going and what we're looking to do. So, flashback to December 2022, just a few months ago. I was in the middle of the most challenging time that I'd ever experienced since I'd become a father. Probably, actually, the most challenging time of my life up until that point, and I'd been through quite a bit. But I'd spent the last 6 or so years, since before my first son was born, working early in the morning and late at night outside of my 9-to-5 job to build my dream business, which is a strength and conditioning facility. So I coached clients in the mornings before work, and then I would, after work and family dinner and those kind of things, I'd go and coach clients more. So I was really working a lot of hours to make it happen. As often as I could during the day, like my lunch hour and then on weekends, on drives, I would pour myself into learning all that I could about strength and conditioning, human performance, nutrition, everything related to that field of helping people maximize their performance and their athleticism. And even though I didn't get a related degree in college, I studied business and history. I self-studied and passed a certification exam with the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the CSCS, that would enable me to be a strength coach at the highest levels of collegiate and professional sports. And it wasn't that I wanted to go into the public sector in that sense, but I did want to formalize my knowledge because I had studied so much of my own. It was nice to have that formal representation that I do have a solid knowledge base in this field because I didn't have the background of a degree. And I also pursued other nutrition certifications and other certifications in that process. But I had started my business from nothing. Initially, in 2014, I had begun personal training people out of a garage. But when we had come back to our hometown, that's when I started coaching more seriously. And again, started really with minimal equipment, no AC, no heater. And during that process, I weathered a 2-year shutdown in our state when COVID hit. In fact, the week that I was going to open a warehouse gym, which I had built up my clientele base and everything to that point, I had gotten the facility ready, was ready to roll into this small warehouse facility, which I planned on working while continuing with my 9-to-5. The week I was going to open that facility, we got shut down in our state. And I still remember getting the announcement that all non-essential businesses would have to cease in-person operations. And so navigating that was such a challenge. We got a young child, I'm working a 9-to-5, and I've got this whole crazy thing going on with paying rent on a space and trying to navigate keeping my gym afloat, asking questions like, is it even worth it to continue with this dream? Should I even try to open up a gym in the future if the government can just come shut me down? So during that shutdown process, that's when I decided to move my operation to the county, which is on my parents' property out in the county in a barn. And kind of like just underground, keep coaching people. We could have the barn open, so it was like an open air environment, small numbers of people, and just sort of decided to not quit, but just kind of keep adapting and persevering. And that led to a partnership with an amazing local company called Samson Equipment. They manufacture premier equipment for collegiate and professional settings. And they outfitted that barn gym with equipment in that partnership, which led to a relationship with another local strength coach. We ended up partnering and creating a sports performance academy specifically for high school and collegiate athletes. And in that process, I left that 9-to-5 to pursue this thing full time. And so we decided that we'd begin that academy in that barn facility. Now, there were limitations on the facility because it was technically a home-based business. And so we couldn't really operate at higher numbers like we would in a larger commercial facility. And so we had plans in place to expand, but there was something that was brewing in the background throughout this whole process that we didn't expect. And, so through this first year of business with this academy, we went through some ups and downs like any business does in the first year. And I was able to help keep the business alive by not taking a paycheck for the latter half of that first year. And so I was feeling the stress and the strain of that already as a young father. And I had thankfully a small group of online clients that were mainly busy fathers who wanted to lose weight and get fit. And I, at that time, called it Full Strength Father. I mean, that was just something that had come to my mind because of my background in strength and conditioning. The story of stone lifting, or the legendary stone lifting, legends of stone lifting, the stories of these historic stones and the traditions that are associated with them. One of the terms you come across is the term full styrker, which means full strength, meaning you could lift the largest stones. And so I really liked how that applied to fatherhood. And that's when I sort of branded that. It came up with that name, Full Strength Father. So, but I was just working with a small number online, and it was able to supplement what we were doing. And we also had some savings that we were able to survive on. So here we are in year one, going through the ups and downs, and I've got another son on the way. So I've got two sons and another one on the way, and I'm feeling the pressure of providing. This was all last year. But I didn't know at the time was that when we moved all that equipment to the barn during the shutdown, there was a non-adjacent neighbor who took note of what was going on and began documenting everything we were doing on the property. This neighbor took pictures, videos, recorded dates and times, amounts of cars and people, and more. They compiled a document of over 70 pages of, quote, evidence to use against us in an attempt to shut down our operation. Even after the COVID situation had sort of blown over, they canvassed the surrounding properties with homemade flyers that outlined all the reasons why our operation should be shut down. They called and went into the county multiple times a week with complaints. They would drive slowly by as we had some athletes outside doing sprints and take videos, making the athletes uncomfortable. But as soon as we realized what was going on with this non-adjacent neighbor, that they had a problem with what we were doing, we attempted to communicate and resolve any issues, but they refused to meet with us and work on solutions. So we just kept it quiet, didn't have people working out late at night, just minimized our footprint as much as possible. And it's funny because the other neighbors who were actually adjacent didn't even really know what we had going on. I mean, they'd noticed some cars were parked there, but just wasn't really a big deal. So all of this came to a head the last 3 months of 2022, our first year in business. So the unrelenting efforts of this neighbor had fast-tracked things with the county, and we came to a fork in the road, and it just became apparent that we would need to cease operations at the barn if we wanted to avoid a lengthy legal process. So the day I found out we would need to shut down our operation, I went to local gyms in our area and tried to meet with the owners, and thankfully was able to come across and find one that was willing to let us train a limited number of athletes out of the space while we found a new location. So with this next step solidified for our performance academy, it seemed like we'd be able to keep the business alive and weather that. And so, what's happening right now, here we are early 2023, April 2023, is that academy is now about to go into a new location from that gym that we were able to work out of. So it's stayed alive. But at the time, I knew strategically that our business model wouldn't be able to sustain itself through the transition without one of us as partners taking a step back. So I had some income coming in through my online client base, and I made an extremely challenging decision to pivot and focus on trying to explore other opportunities for income. And at the time, I felt lost and quite defeated. I wanted to pursue my passion, and I already put in years and effort and weathered a lot of storms. And more deeply, I wanted to show my sons by example that anything's possible if they believe and they put the work in and they just don't quit. But at that moment, I really felt like I had failed because I had to pivot. I had to change direction. I felt like there was really no way forward for me in that area. So the same week that I found out that we'd have to shut down our operation and was going through that challenge personally with the business, my wife and I learned that our third son had passed away in a miscarriage. And I cannot describe adequately with words the depth of the pain and the loss that we felt that moment that we discovered that. And then, of course, the weeks and months that followed. I mean, unless you've experienced something like that, it's very, very hard to describe. So I felt like every day I was walking in some sort of dream. I felt numbness, pain, a suffocating anxiety, all of those things at the same time, and they would come in waves. And it took immense effort to get through each day and maintain my bearings on what I needed to do. And I felt completely like I was completely losing touch with my life's purpose, my dreams, and my vision. I felt emotionally exhausted and mentally drained from all those years of effort that seemed to have brought no reward. And for the first time in my life, I lost my ability to see opportunities for growth in challenges. And I began to focus on the negative. Physically, I felt weaker. I lacked energy. I lacked drive. I remember showing up to the gym early one morning and sitting in my car, staring blankly into the dark pre-dawn sky. And I stepped into the gym and I had a workout plan, but it was literally all I could do just to ride a bike in the gym slowly for 20 minutes before leaving. Very uncharacteristic of me. And so just 5 months earlier, I'd felt like I was in the best shape of my life at 34. Like I was more fit than I was when I was a D1 athlete. Now I was starting to let myself go, gaining weight from eating extra food late at night while escaping into Netflix shows, social media, YouTube videos. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror with confidence anymore. It was a really tough place to be. So during the months of December and January, I began looking for opportunities in other industries. I found an opportunity for a sales position in Texas over 8 hours away from our home. So in order to get me started, I'd need to spend a period of time away from my family. And then after that, I'd only get to see them on weekends until we could relocate. And the thought of missing those precious daily moments with my wife and my boys was really almost too much for me to bear at the time with where I was. But I knew that I needed to provide for them, and it seemed like there was no other option. So try as I might, though I couldn't dull the pain that I felt when I thought of leaving them. But even with that pain, I really felt compelled to explore the position and to go through a training and onboarding phase with the company and to accept that position, that opportunity. So I had to get to that point where I was willing to give everything up and just go. And I remember packing up my suitcase and watching my wife and my boys fade into the rear view mirror as I began that long drive out into Texas. So with every increasing mile of separation from my family, I felt sort of these sparks of anger-like motivation to make this upcoming opportunity worth every second. I started to feel that stirring, like this I remember gripping the steering wheel tightly with this fixed gaze on the horizon as I drove through that dark night in the hill country. If I was going to be away from them and to give up my dreams and what I felt was my purpose because of these circumstances, I was damn sure going to make sure that my effort was worth it. I would be the most dialed, hardworking, and productive salesperson possible. I would max out every single hour of every day, every training, every appointment. And so on that drive, I really started to feel those feelings. And the next morning, I woke up early, 4:30, laced up my running shoes, and I ran. I ran through the humid morning air with no headphones, just the sound of my footsteps and my breath. Those sparks of anger were now a full-force bonfire. I experienced the clarity I used to feel the morning of a big game. My stride frequency increased and I felt my lungs working and the familiar muscular burn of high-effort training. Like it was time. It was time to step full force into this new phase and provide for my family at all costs. So I arrived 30 minutes early to my initial meeting, which was an in-person sales training led by the local manager and attended by my teammates, the other salespeople. I watched as the clock ticked closer to the time that our meeting was scheduled to start. And about 15 minutes prior to the meeting, the first salesperson showed up. I recognized him. He was a friend from over 10 years ago. We greeted each other enthusiastically and caught up. Then his countenance changed, and with a look of concern, he said he needed to tell me about the reality of what was going on. He shared with me how challenging things were in the company with new programs and strategies being implemented alongside poor leadership. So I expressed my gratitude for his honesty, and then we continued waiting for the meeting to start. Well, the clock continued ticking. 5 minutes, 10 minutes after, a couple of the other salespeople showed up. We greeted them. Small talk, more waiting, 20 minutes. With every minute that passed, I became more wary. Based on my conversations with the company, I had been under the impression that I would be joining a high-powered sales organization with the potential to learn, grow, make significant income. And then how could this be the case if meetings couldn't even start on time? With my background, I just felt like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if I was already starting to see these warning signs, these red flags that, maybe things weren't quite what they've been portrayed to be. So 25 minutes after the meeting was supposed to start, the manager arrived and we began the meeting. His first question, okay, guys, and we had a tough month in January. What are we doing wrong right now? Literally, that's what he asked. And so what followed was an hour of back and forth on challenges and issues the salespeople were facing. And I sat there intently absorbing every comment, every emotion and detail with this sort of different lens. And in that short hour, I was able to identify the reality of the situation. Like, this opportunity was nothing like what I was told. I knew that in that instant, that if I were to sacrifice precious time with my family, my hard-earned skills and talents, and my finite energy to this cause, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I would always look back on this moment and wonder, what if? So as the meeting wrapped up, I knew what I had to do. As I walked out to the parking lot with the manager, I felt the implications of what I was about to do really hit me, and questions started to fill my mind. Are you sure that your impression of this situation is accurate? You've invested all this time to come out here. Why don't you keep going through the onboarding process and just see if it's a good fit? Can't you cut these guys some slack? Can you really know if it's a good fit from just one meeting? What will you do instead? What will your wife say? What will you tell her? How will you put food on the table next week and pay for your mortgage? All of those thoughts and more raced through my mind in that split second, and I felt a peace and assurance come over me immediately. I knew my interpretation of the situation was correct. I needed to trust in the impressions I had just received, and I needed to take action. I needed to take a leap of faith into the dark and do what I knew to be right in the moment, even if I didn't have all the answers. So as we arrived at my vehicle, the manager said, well, I don't have any appointments set up for you to shadow, so why don't we just go to a Starbucks and go over some product training? I replied, I know that this is out of the blue, but I'm going to have to pursue other options. Out of respect for you and your time and my time, I appreciate everything, but I'm not going to pursue this opportunity any further. So he looked stunned and quickly gathered himself and began inquiring as to why I wasn't going to continue. And I simply replied that I could feel that it wasn't a good fit for me personally and that I'd be looking into other opportunities. So we shook hands and he wished me the best. I sat in my car, took a deep breath. Silence. Then the questions started coming back. Are you sure you did the right thing? What are you going to do now? How are you going to provide for your family? Again, those questions were sort of washed away by a feeling of peace and assurance that filled my heart and my mind. And the thought came, everything will work together for your good. You just need to trust and take one step at a time. And following that meeting, I met with an old friend that lived in the area. We had spent time together as missionaries over 10 years earlier. It had been a period of immense growth for both of us and a time that had been foundational in charting the course of our lives. So we caught up, talked through what I had experienced that morning, and spent time with his young family. And as I left his house, I couldn't help but feel that our time together was a divine reminder of my purpose and my potential. And I was beginning to see how the pattern of events that I'd just experienced were uniquely designed to reignite my fire and remind me of my purpose. I was filled with gratitude. And then my phone rang. Is this Kristoffer? I replied that it was. Hi, I'm the VP of Operations, and I wanted to personally reach out and offer you $500 to stay just one more day and meet with me tomorrow. I can book a flight tonight and be there first thing in the morning. I'm sorry for what you've experienced, and I'd like to have an opportunity to make things right, keep you on board. I paused. Like, could this be real? Wait, was the impression that I received earlier wrong? If it was right, why would this be happening? I could really use that $500 right now. But immediately those questions and doubt were burned away. I knew what I needed to do. I knew that my decision was correct. And even though I didn't know what the future held, I couldn't deny what I felt. I said, I deeply appreciate you reaching out, but I'm going to stand by my earlier decision out of respect for your time and mine, I responded. So our conversation continued, and we discussed some of the details of the morning and the impression that I'd received. During the remainder of our conversation, he attempted 2 more times to convince me to stay. Each time, the same clarity came to me, reinforcing my decision, and I stood by my earlier response. After, I hung up the phone, and I was again filled with gratitude. It felt so good to feel direction again, to feel purpose. Because for months, that literally felt like years, I had been drifting into darkness and almost completely overtaken by the challenges I was going through. And even though in that moment I didn't know specifically what I was going to do next, I knew that I was being guided. I knew that I was on the path. And I knew that if I kept persevering, the next step would become clear at some point. And that step was revealed to me on the drive home. As I accelerated on the interstate the next morning, it was as if my mind was revving up in tandem with the cylinders in the engine. Just as each revolution of the piston produces energy to move the vehicle forward, my mind seemed to be firing on all cylinders with ideas, impressions, and feelings, all working to move me towards my greater purpose. I had a realization that I had been given a singular opportunity, that literally all of my talents, skills, knowledge, and experiences could be leveraged to positively impact others, specifically fathers. Although I was full of fire and purpose in that moment, I could still feel that version of me that had been in darkness, struggling to move, unsure, atrophied, in pain, feeling purposeless. And even though that version of me was chained by all of those things, he still loved and cherished his family. That version of me still desired to care for them. He still wanted to see them smile and laugh and experience the goodness of life. He wanted to know that they were safe and they were loved. He wanted to break free of where he was. I immediately, in that moment, felt a sense of duty overcome me as I pictured that man. Me. A duty to leverage all of my gifts to help him, to show him the path, to encourage, to walk with him, to lead him to victory, freedom, and purpose. So as I drove, I could see in my mind's eye all the frameworks that I had studied, applied, and tweaked to maximize human performance over the years. Training structures and models, nutrition strategies, recovery practices, and more. I realized that those frameworks, those structures, those strategies, and tactics could be uniquely designed to help fathers live each day full of focus, energy, strength, and athleticism. I could see so clearly how I would be able to help men be more engaged with their families, productive in their careers, and impactful in their communities by giving them the tools to maximize their physical fitness for the rest of their lives. Those realizations opened my mind to see that my primary responsibility on my new path was to lead by example first. That as a father myself, I had a duty to make sure that I was living every single day to the fullest, leaving no stone unturned, no moment wasted. That I would be the first to apply the frameworks, the structures, the strategies, the tactics that I was teaching. That I would never ask of another man or my sons something that I was unwilling to do myself. In that moment, I started to feel the weight of what I was about to undertake, and I realized that by fully committing to this path, I was essentially burning the boats. I was drawing a line in the sand. There was no going back. I realized that by accepting the path, the calling I now felt, living up to it, I would become a marked man. I knew that the growth I would experience alongside other men and my sons would be equal to the amount of challenge and opposition that would come. That's an eternal law, that the pursuit of greatness be marked by resistance. Just like the development of physical strength, speed, and power, our minds, our hearts, our spirits must be exposed to strain and effort and challenge consistently if we're going to grow and make progress. As the desert of West Texas passed behind me, I started to feel a hope and direction that I hadn't felt in months. I looked at the mountains in the distance, the rocks that had no doubt been exposed to the harsh sun, cold nights, and monsoons for multiple millennia. I was reminded of how fleeting my life is on Earth. And that what matters most is that I use my finite, limited time in the pursuit of my greater purpose, becoming the best husband, father, the best man that I can be. And what a blessing that purpose that I felt aligned with that calling of helping other fathers. So in the days that followed, I poured myself into study, meditation, and creation. I studied training systems, read forums of professional strength coaches, reflected on my own experiences and practices. I read and reread textbooks, books, watched videos, and recalled case studies of certain concepts and tools that I had seen successfully implemented. Although I had studied and applied these concepts before, I was now seeing all of it as if it were brand new. I was consuming this information with a different perspective. I questioned, can I discover a training, nutrition, and lifestyle framework that will help fathers live lean, strong, athletic, and energetic for the rest of their lives? What are those core elements that are needed for this framework to be effective? And more. And so hour after hour, I continued. I began to write, to lay out the concepts visually in front of me. I began to design a system based on what I was discovering. I was distilling all of the information into clear, concise, and actionable strategies. I began to feel excitement because I had already experienced some of what I was discovering in my own programming, and I had been using pieces of it with my one-on-one online coaching clients to great effect. But finally, I felt like I had all the strategies clarified. I had a workable training, lifestyle, and nutrition system that was beautifully simple, brutally effective, and could be individually adapted. It was sustainable. It could be used for a lifetime. Most importantly, I knew that it would answer that core question. Can I discover a training, nutritional, and lifestyle framework that will help fathers live lean, strong, athletic, energetic for the rest of their lives? So I immediately implemented the strategies in my own program, and the results have been nothing short of life-changing for me personally. I'm spending less time in the gym. I'm experiencing greater increases in capacity, strength, and aesthetics. My energy's through the roof. My joints feel fresh. I'm more focused and intentional. The compounding effect of those feelings that I just described allows me to maintain a higher level of discipline in my nutrition and other lifestyle practices. I feel like my progression is becoming more automatic. It's more sustainable than it has been ever before. Most importantly, I'm more engaged with my family than ever. I feel like I have excess energy that can be called upon anytime my boys ask me to play, when I need to resolve conflict or combat daily emotional stressors. I'm sleeping more deeply, waking more refreshed, and each passing week I'm getting increasingly excited to help others utilize these strategies because of how good I'm feeling. In addition to my own experience, I have started to see my one-on-one clients achieve dramatic results in strength development, capacity, body composition, and more. And on average, those who are utilizing these systems are losing 25 to 30 pounds of body fat in around 16 weeks while maintaining muscle mass. Their strength is increasing dramatically. They're also experiencing increases in energy-focused productivity. It's been nothing short of amazing. One of the most exciting elements of this whole process leading to this point for me has been the fact that I know without a doubt that the more I and the fathers and I work with utilize these life-changing strategies, the more we will be able to improve upon them. There is no end to progress, to growth. It's a lifelong journey, and I know that if I am committed to consistently questioning, discovering, and applying, I will always be learning and reaching new heights. And so now I look forward into the future, and with Full Strength Father, developing not only the systems and the strategies that we can use as fathers to live our lives to the fullest, but also a community of like-minded men who are pursuing the same thing. And in that community, there's going to be so much power and so much accountability. And I just can't wait for that to start developing, because we're just getting started right now. I'm literally in a closet office that I retrofitted as an office with my little standing desk, and it's hot because there's no AC in here, and I have to turn off my fan because I'm recording, and so the temperature starts to rise every single minute I'm in here, and it's like, okay, I got to stop recording because I'm going to start sweating and dripping sweat all over the place. But so here I am, right? Just getting started with this thing. It's going to be massive. It's going to be a movement that changes thousands upon thousands of fathers' lives. And if we can help fathers live to their potential, the natural byproduct of that is that families will be stronger. Wives will be more valued and uplifted. They, as women, will be able to maximize their role and experience greater joy. Children will be more loved, more cared for, and they will be able to progress in ways that they would not otherwise be able to progress without an intentional, informed, disciplined, loving father leading the family alongside his wife. Now, I don't know where you may be, listening to this podcast, but I hope that what I've shared today can in some way inspire you to take action on the impressions that you feel in your life. Because looking back on it, I was in that darkness, in that space, that a dramatic experience had to bring me out of it. And I can just say that if you are going through something like that right now in your life, if you were feeling like I was feeling, which many of us are in life because that's life, just trust the process of following those impressions that you receive and take action on them, because there is hope on the other side. And even if you can't see it right now, I promise you that it's there if you just don't quit. So with that, I'll speak to you next time. Thanks for listening. And until then, live full strength or die.